Want to sharpen your aim, save money on ammo, and train like the pros, all from the comfort of your home? Meet Mantis X, the cutting-edge dry-fire training system used by the Marine Corps, Army, and Special Forces to build precision and confidence. 94% of shooters report improved accuracy in just 20 minutes, and you could be next. With Mantis X, you train with your own firearm, anytime, anywhere, without wasting a single round. In less than 2 weeks, the system pays for itself in ammo savings alone. As a proud gun owner, I believe in the Second Amendment, but rights come with responsibility. That means refining your accuracy, mastering your skills, and staying prepared every time you train. Whether you're a new shooter or an experienced marksman, Mantis X helps you train smarter, shoot better, and defend what matters most. Get yours today at MantisX.com. That's MantisX.com.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You have my sword.
And you have my bow.
And my trowel. Hi, you're listening to episode 45 of And My Trowel, where we look at the fantastic side of archaeology and the archaeological side of fantasy. I'm Ash.
And I'm Tilly.
Did you see the article in the Dimrill Daily this morning?
No. Was I supposed to?
Have a look.
Wait, what? That isn't possible. They found another door, like the Doors of Durin.
I know, right? But, I mean, anything is possible in this world that is totally based in reality.
Right, yes, of course, precisely. But hang on, how come we didn't know about this news before it was published? Surely we're the best people to contact about this directly, not like a random reporter.
Yeah, that's a good point. Have you checked the Pigeon Post lately?
No, I thought that you got the Pigeon Post.
Oh, let me go check. Ah, well, there's the mystery. There's a letter here from the Bazkardum Society of Dwarfish History, dated from 2 months ago. Oops.
Oh, okay. Well, what did it say?
Okay. Well, it actually says the last time we were working with the Bazkardum Society, they started to look into the revitalization project and have actually begun to delve back into Moria. During one of their missions, they found another great gate to the south, leading to the Great Southern Abyss. So they have another Door of Durin. And this one seems to resemble the Doors of Durin more than any other entrance in the whole place. But get this, it's almost the opposite of the Doors of Durin, apparently.
The opposite? What do you mean the opposite? How on earth did they find that out?
Well, it seems like there was some sort of disagreement and someone screamed ego and the doors appeared and opened.
Oh, dear.
Yes, especially because it leads to the Southern Abyss. I hope that guy's alive. And now the Society is looking for someone to study both the Doors of Durin, the new door, their carvings, and record the carvings, that they have a record of these amazing monuments for the future.
Okay, that does sound very cool, and I am very excited to look at the Doors of Durin. However, I don't really have that much experience in the way of rock carvings. Do you?
Not a lot. Luckily, I know the expert to help us on this quest. Let me introduce you to archaeologist Dr. Megan Kasten.
Hello!
Yay! Welcome, Megan.
Welcome to the quest, Megan.
Thank you very much.
So, Megan, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your specialism and how did you get into it?
My specialism is using digital imaging methods like photogrammetry and reflectance transformation imaging to analyze early medieval sculpture. Usually early medieval, but I dabble in other areas as well. But I got into it because I always really liked using computer approaches to archaeology and came over to Glasgow to do my master's in Celtic and Viking archaeology. And my future PhD supervisor asked, how do you feel about 3D? And I'm like, all right, yeah, sounds good.
I live in a 3D world.
Oh, yeah, sounds good.
Okay, and there were a lot of words there. So photogrammetry, I feel like I know how that works, and I guess we're going to go into the details of that later. What was the other thing you mentioned?
Reflectance transformation imaging, which isn't actually a 3D approach, but we can get into it when we talk more about photogrammetry. Yeah.
Is there an easier way to say that? Because I admit you've literally just told me it 2 times and I've already forgotten it again.
Yeah, so reflectance transformation imaging is referred to as RTI.
RTI, that I can remember.
There's not enough time in the world, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I guess we'll go into that in a little bit more detail a bit more later. But you mentioned kind of future PhD or future thing. What are you working on at the moment? What's your current?
So that was referring to past Megan. So I finished my PhD in 2019.
So much time travel going on here.
Weird. But yeah, so I did my PhD, finished it in 2019, just in time for the old P word to hit. And I guess COVID more than pandemic, but anyway.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was trying to think of P words. I was like, which P word did you do? Okay, yeah. Postgrad?
Postdoc did spontaneously appear in 20.
So 2 P words.
Yeah. But so 2020, because I do digital, I was able to get by with short contract sort of things because everyone had to switch to digital, so that was handy.
That was very handy, actually. Yeah.
I don't recommend it for career progression, personally. So I got involved with the OM project, which I've been on that postdoc for. It started in late 2021, just about 4 years now.
And what is the OM project?
So the OM project is essentially, it's us at University of Glasgow, and then so it's Professor Catherine Forsyth, and myself at University of Glasgow, and then at University of Maynooth we have colleagues Professor Deborah Hayden, Professor David Stifter, and Dr. Nora White. And so what we're doing is we're digitizing all OM, and so OM is a script that seems to develop in Ireland after the Romans kind of show up in the British Isles on the scene, and then they've decided
Bloody Romans.
Yeah, but they were like, oh yeah, we could come up with a script for our own language sounds and things. That's how took place. Yeah,
which I'm very happy that I now know how it's pronounced because
not Ogham.
Yeah, there's a whole blog post about it. It's either Ogham or Ogham, but it's a little dangerous saying it that way. But yeah.
And hang on, so the OM project though, is that just it's a project about OM, or is that a acronym? OM.
No, that one's a project about OM, but because in Ireland they spell it OGAM, and then in the UK we spell it OGHAM. That's why there's the little parentheses there.
Got it. I got excited. To our listeners who are wondering what the hell I'm talking about, I got excited because I saw the script and the OM looked like it was maybe an acronym, but it's not. It's just
no.
He loves an acronym.
I do love an acronym. It's just so nice when there's wouldn't it be great if the OM project could, I don't know, or I don't even know what it would be. Or great magnetic. No, I don't know what it would be. Never mind. Sorry.
There's no case sensitivity in OM, so same either way.
There you go.
For those who don't know what OM is, because I have to admit, I think about it and I picture a lot of lines overlapping with a lot of other lines. But how is that a language?
It's not a language, it's a script, of course. So if you think runes, a bit like that, where technically it relates to a specific sound, each letter. So you could write English in OM. Sometimes you have to get a bit creative, but essentially each letter is based on a number of strokes, somewhere between 1 and 5, and it's designed as a 3-dimensional script, which is why we do 3D imaging on it. But some letters go to the left of the corner of the stone, and some letters go to the right of the corner of the stone, and some of them go across the corner of the stone. And then the vowels are directly like little notches out of the corner, basically.
That's so interesting. I would love to learn. I'm assuming it's a sort of interdisciplinary team. So are there OM professionals and scanning professionals? And
yeah, so Professor Catherine Forsyth is basically the queen of OM, and then David and Deborah. Deborah does more the medieval manuscripts because OM doesn't really stop ever. And then David
never stops.
It just goes on. So many notches.
And then David does more of the sort of linguistic side of things. And then Dr. Nora White she was the PI on the original OM in 3D, which was recording all OM monuments in state care in Ireland. That's how everyone kind of fits. And then I'm a 3D person, so I'm the odd one out who I had to pick up OM.
Without the project would not be possible. A cornerstone, see what I did there, of the project.
Oh, another terrible pun. Okay, it seems like we have definitely come to the right person, I think.
Yes.
I don't know about you, Tilly. It's a bit of a relief.
Was that another pun?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, gosh. Okay. I think we should get a cup of tea before we begin because our minds are clearly all a bit all over the place. Hang on, let me boil the cauldron and we'll be right back. Welcome back. So is everyone's tea all right now? I think our cauldron might need an upgrade. Megan, I'm so sorry about the accidental Eye of Newt.
That's all right. These things happen.
Okay, how about we dig into the part of our chats, the literature review. Yay. Megan, are you also a fan of fantasy fiction?
Yes. Yeah.
Good.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
I'm waiting for another day where our guest is actually, no, I really hate fantasy.
We're like, oh no. I only like action. Oh, great.
Fantasy can also be action. But anyway, yes. Excellent. So what would you say is your kind of favorite fantasy book or series?
I would say The Lord of the Rings is probably my favorite.
Yes!
But I was going through like my mental library going back. And I also remembered that the Sabriel series by Garth Nix I enjoyed. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I remember reading them. They were so good. They were really
and he had come out with a recent one, I guess not recent, it was like 5 years ago or something. But I have
recent.
that one that I've started to read and quite haven't finished yet, so I'm going to have to reread it again. But it's been good.
Didn't they also indeed include runes or something?
Oh, they've got charter stones, which I had to go look this up again because it was a vague memory. But yeah, so the charter stones have symbols associated with them, but it keeps it really vague. And the mages reach into the charter and pull symbols out of the air, essentially. And then that creates a spell. So it's similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because when I was having a look, and I don't know about you guys, if you know any fantasy books that have rock carving or even runes or anything in them, I think that most of them have something about it. So I was like looking into like rock carvings and stuff, and I found like a load of books. I was thinking like The Witcher, and even like the Witcher like game series, there's loads of ancient runes and carvings around the world where you go and you can get like your power from it and magical prophecies and stuff. But then I was like, oh, I wonder if there's anything actually about the concept of recreating like 3D objects as well. So I went on a bit of a deep dive through that. So first of all, can you think of any other series that might have rock art or carvings or runes or anything like that in them?
So I have to admit, I came up a slight blank with my favorite series.
Oh, no way!
I was sure that there were some in, but they have a lot about like different carved stones. The main thing is that they have like standing stones. In a lot of places, those feature quite heavily, but they're not carved. They're just standing stones, and they have a life of their own. So there's one standing stone that's in a different place every time you go up to the stone circle, for example. And they have carved stones that have a hole in it, and they're magical. If they have a hole in it, it's like this whole thing. People are going, why are they magical? It's like, they're just magical. Like, of course they are if they have a hole in them. But apart from that, there weren't really the only 3D kind of scanning thing. I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't come up with many. I came up with a lot that have runes, right? And carvings and those sorts of things, which, one that I distinctly remember was indeed the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, because there was a lot of references to, different sort of ancient carvings, ancient runes, which show the history, which I really liked, actually, that they have so much. There's a surprising amount of archaeology, actually, in the Chronicles of Narnia, which I didn't ever really notice when I read them the first time. But then I was trying to remember with these runes, and I was looking back through them and going, okay, there's so many ruins and like references to past cultures and things. So anyway, I need to go back in. We should do a deep dive into Narnia at some point with.
Do you know, it's weird because C.S. Lewis always sits weirdly with me how he treated, is it Susan, who doesn't go back to Narnia? Because she becomes too grown up. And I found that really annoying. Yeah. I found that really sexist and weird. Like, it was like, ooh. So I always get a bit like, ooh, now with the Chronicles of Narnia.
We don't have to do a deep dive into the Chronicles of Narnia.
No, we can. We definitely can. But I just want to say that I think he had his own stuff going on.
Yeah.
It is funny, though, that you say that, because I actually did a blog post on Ohm in video games. And a lot of the time, it is associated with prehistoric monuments. Because we do get instances where prehistoric monuments were then later carved with Ohm. There's like reuse all over the place. But it's become so enmeshed in kind of that association that sometimes people will say, oh, it's an Ohm stone. It's actually just a prehistoric monument or a standing stone with something on it, but not actually the script itself. And it's just really funny that it's been disassociated like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and considering it's from a completely different period.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it looks ancient.
Oh.
Which actually, that does feature in Discworld because one of the main witches is called Nanny Og, and she's like the matriarch of this long-standing family in Lanka, and the secret script that they use as a family is called Ogham.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
That's very fun.
Yes.
Wow, it didn't take you long, to be fair.
Surely there's something.
Some of the stuff that I came up with was the Dark Tower series, Stephen King. Has anyone ever read those?
I have not.
Oh yeah, it's like his foray into fantasy. I suppose all of his stuff is fantasy in a way, but it's more creepy. But the Dark Tower series, like, they have a lot of rock art and carvings. There's murals and there's carvings, but that kind of serving as cryptic clues and warnings to like the deeper lore of the world as well, which is really interesting. But then in the Gunslinger, which is one of the books in the series, Roland, the protagonist, and they have these artifacts, magical, like technological artifacts that seem to can recreate or rebuild items, which I thought was kind of like the 3D, recreating 3D objects.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you can like shape and reconstruct materials. Isn't that really cool? Yeah. So, like, Megan, that would be so handy for you.
I do have a 3D printer that I've been dabbling with as well. So that's...
Oh, I love 3D printing. That's what I use because I make candles and wax melts inside of artifacts. And that's how I make them, is I do a 3D print. Like I draw them up, 3D print them, and then make them into little wax. And I love doing that.
It's quite handy when you go to a conference and it's not necessarily a early medieval conference. And so people are like, what are you working on? And I basically have just started bringing a 3D print of an Ohm inscribed object. And I'm like,
that's cool.
I was going to say, I just bring out my artifact collection.
I just bring out my Ohm. Like, here you go.
what they ask.
Just give me a second. Let me pull this on my trolley.
Oh, that'd be so funny.
But indeed, it does seem to be more communication based. I feel like that's the difference between rock carvings and also rock paintings. Also, I guess in our world, but in the sort of fantasy universes as well, it's if you carve something into the rock, it's always really there's a message behind it. It's very rarely in fantasy fiction, at least, as well, and I guess similar in our ones as well. It's more that really it's about a message or a secret or something like that.
Yeah, I thought of like the Earthsea cycle by Ursula Le Guin, and like how every single piece of ancient knowledge is like in the ruins or carved into ruins, or it's about magic and history and balance and all this stuff. And we really associate that with carving. It's passing down knowledge from one to the next. Which is interesting because like actually in reality, perhaps it was more of an oral tradition, but we don't know if it's like both, do we? Megan, you're probably more coined in on that.
It's probably a little bit of both, because so obviously Ohm stones, those are, we can read most of them. It's when it gets to Scotland it gets a bit funky sometimes.
What have we done?
But in Ireland it's almost always a man's name, but then they'll mostly always have basically their father or their grandfather, and they use there's Mac or McCoy. Those are indicative kind of parts of the name that's okay, after this point that's his dad, or I think Avi it's when it's the grandfather. And so they're like little bits of the inscription that you're like, okay, after that point that's the grandfather. But there's also sometimes it's pointing more towards the group that they belong to. And because those stones are usually situated on the boundaries of places, or at least it coincides with kind of earlier parish or whatever sort of boundaries, they seem to be demarcating territory in a lot of cases anyway. Which
I feel like that happens a lot in fantasy fiction as well. You'll quite often have, I'm trying to think now of which, I guess it's more in films, you have a lot of that, this sort of, we have reached the land of blah, blah, blah now. Yeah. And you have the classic, right, of the Door of the Dead, entering the realm of the dead in Lord of the Rings, and they have that door frame, which has those sort of carvings into it in the film. I'm trying to remember whether they have that in the book as well, actually. I think they do.
Door of the Dead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have carved symbols in that as well, saying this is the realm of the Door of the Dead.
Oh my God, now you're testing me.
Right? Here, let me just refer to my notes and have a look. So indeed, the Dark Door, which according to the fictional depictions, according to the historic records, at last they came to a deep into the glen, and there stood a sheer wall of rock, and in the wall the dark door gaped before them like the mouth of night. Signs and figures were carved above its wide arch, too dim to read, and fear flowed from it like a grey vapour. So I guess they didn't actually know what it said. So it's not like in the film version where you have,
it's a great candidate for RTI then, so we can add that into the
dark
RTI
door
on the dark door. but I get the implication in the film at least, and also the implication in the book is that indeed it's also showing the new realm, showing the territory boundary.
Yeah, I love that this is an evil door.
Evil door.
This is an evil door. I don't think I've ever said that in my life.
And my death lies beyond it. I've said that many times. Going into things. And Gimli, I feel for the next one, it seemed to Gimli that he dragged his feet like lead over the threshold.
Yes. Poor Gimli.
I got you, Gimli, as I understand.
Going into every meeting ever.
But yeah, because I was trying to think of other sort of classic, I guess it's in all the sort of big fantasy literature, like in Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. You also have ancient carvings, which are linked to mysteries, and you have in the Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks, you also have ancient relics or ancient carvings, which are again hidden truth. It's all about hidden truth because you have to be able to interpret the carvings in order to understand the
which actually is interesting because if you look at later on, so obviously it's classical period, we'll call it that, and where loads of people are using it, and then it stops it. The Vikings kind of pick it up, and then they have a great time with it. Isle of Man, you actually have quite a few graffiti inscriptions. They're really lightly incised, so we had to use RTI on them, but they've actually incised them onto another monument, another upright cross slab. And basically, a lot of the time, what they do is they basically write out the ABCs just to be like, oh, look, I know my ABCs, right?
Well, they know it better than me then, because I do not know my ABCs.
But then once it gets into kind of manuscript tradition, it becomes like it's one of the things that they actually study in Ireland as part of their like lawyers and medical learning. They also pick up Ogham. And so it continues in this manuscript sort of tradition. And some people, if you look at the Book of Ogham, of course, you have really interesting cryptography things that they actually come up with. So they connect it to mythological figures from Irish mythology. And they're like, oh, this is Finn's shield Ogham, and I might have messed that up, but that sort of thing.
Okay. But then, as in, this was the Vikings doing like medieval?
So that was the Vikings kind of picked it up, but then it becomes part of the manuscript sort of learned tradition. So monks and folks like that.
Yeah, but still early. Okay, I was thinking you meant like 1980s.
This is 13th, 12th century. I think actually the earliest manuscript. I think, this is testing my knowledge now. There's lots of blocks on the page, but I think it's a 13th century copy of an earlier manuscript. I won't say what date because I can't remember. But
because we want to tease people.
You
have to go look at the songs.
Yeah. I saw a copy of a 13th century manuscript the other day, actually. It was
just dropping that in there.
Yeah, it was part of the Ulster cycle with Cullen and all that, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
They are very cool.
I'll get a picture. Put it in the show notes.
We'll put a picture of Ash's evening activities in the show notes where she just goes and looks at 13th century manuscripts.
It was very cool.
But yeah, I still can't think of, so I have lots of ideas in terms of fantasy fiction of runes and carvings and carved stones, but in terms of the technology, did you have any other ones about 3D technology, Ash? Because you mentioned you'd found a few.
Yeah, my pick of the choice of the litter was The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. Now, this is sci-fi, and I keep mentioning sci-fi quite a lot.
I feel it's inevitable when talking about technology, though.
Yeah, and this is also talks about like the preservation of history through technology, and I think that actually has hand in hand with rock carving and things like that too. Yeah, in The Forever War, it's basically touches on the concept of preserving history, and in the future, after things happen, records and artifacts from the past are like digitally scanned and preserved in ways for the characters to explore and then recreate their past environments and objects. So it gives that kind of a historical...
that's basically what we do now.
Yeah.
The experimental archaeologists.
Yeah, it really is. And the whole book's really interesting. It won a lot of awards. It's all based on Vietnam. It has a very anti-war stance. And fun fact about it, actually, so part of the plot is actually located on a planet called Charon, the Greek Charon, who leads you across the river Styx, which is beyond Pluto. But that was written in before they even discovered the planetoid that we have today called Charon. Isn't that cool?
Do you think maybe whoever discovered it had read The Forever War and was like,
I think so.
like, it must be. That's too big a coincidence.
Isn't that cool, though? Pluto and Charon, the Hades is Pluto and Charon is the same guy. So, yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that about that.
That is very interesting. Oh, gosh. What on earth is that noise?
Did you shut the pigeon coop when you grabbed the post?
Oh no! Oh god, all the birds are out. Quick, Ash, Megan, we need to catch them. Okay, hang on. Sorry, everyone. We need to cut short this episode of At My Trowel, but don't worry. We will be continuing next episode with part 2 of our discussion with Megan about all rock art, carvings, etc. In the meantime, as always, please do subscribe, follow, wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us to support the show. And of course, if you want to show your support in more tangible ways, you can join the Fellowship of the Trowel by purchasing your very own swag. Check out our Dashery storefront at archpodnet.dashery.com. You can also find the link in the show notes, as you can also find all of our contact information as well as links and further information on what we discussed today.
The Archaeology Podcast Network is 10 years old this year. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy, our social media coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht, and our chief editor is Rachel Roden. The Archaeology Podcast Network was co-founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle in 2014 and is part of Cultural Media and DigTech LLC.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.